Let's do our waiver wire this week, and we'll start Fabs with the quarterback position.
And we got three pretty good options. I mean, first is Derek Carr. The guy has been on absolute fire. New Orleans has scored over 90 combined points in their first two games. Like, that's crazy. They have over 800 yards of total offense. And they got the Eagles this week. So that's a really good matchup. And listen, Derek Carr is not going to end up being Superman, but the matchup's good and the offenses look great. So you got to pick him up. Justin Fields has already been announced as a starter for week 3 for the Steelers. So you pick him up off the waiver wire again, even if it's just as a backup. And then Sam Darnold, I know Lindsay's smiling. She loves this one, but hey, I give the guy credit where
What?
credit is due. He had a
Who?
very good game against the 49ers. Now, if Justin Jefferson's out, I don't know that I love him as much, but hopefully JJ is going
Yeah,
to be good to go this week against
right.
Houston. But yeah, I mean, Darnold is going to be a guy you pick up as a backup.
Hmm. Say that again. Sam Darnold. Want to pick him up? Okie doke. I'm enjoying these last couple of weeks of Sam Darnold talk and also bracing myself
Yeah.
for it to potentially go away. Let's talk about running backs now. Who are we picking up off the waiver wire if you have one of these guys who are hurt? Now Pacheco may be mixing. You got to back him up.
So the Kansas City situation is honestly fluid, and it's really hard to pick it out because I would say in order it would probably be Carson Steele first.
Right.
And then it would be Samaje Perine. And then you could take a shot on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he's not eligible to play yet. So he's still going to be out a couple of weeks. But maybe he ends up taking the job back once he comes back. I don't know. It depends on how Steele and Perine play. But I'm hoping, and I crapped on Patrick Mahomes yesterday, and I crapped on Travis Kelce yesterday, and for good reason. I hope this means those guys are going to be more productive from a fantasy perspective. For the Texans, if Mixon can't go this week, and as of this recording, we don't know, Damian Pierce would be the first ad, but he didn't play last week either because he was hurt. So that would mean Cam Akers. Ty Chandler is worth a roster spot in Minnesota. I think at some point you're going to see him uh, maybe being a nice sleeper from a fantasy perspective. Bucky Irving is worth an ad off the waiver wire. And Braylon Allen, even if it's just a handcuff, Brees Hall is certainly worth a look. That guy's a beast. And he was a standalone flex yesterday, or excuse me, on Sunday. We just didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I need you to order those people for me because I think we went out of order in terms of priority.
Well, so I do think whoever the Chiefs running back is going to be would be one of the top two spots because it's going to be a 6 to 8 week injury. So there's going to be touches there. Ty Chandler still got Aaron Jones ahead of him. Bucky Irving still has Rashad White ahead of him. Braylon Allen's not going to get a ton of touches with Brees Hall ahead of him. So we're looking at guys who are going to get volume. And one of those Kansas City guys is going to be the dart throw that will potentially get the most volume out of this group.
I think I disagree with that only because what we've seen in the past from Kansas City, and this goes back a while prior to Isaiah Pacheco, is that when you don't have a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, they don't bell cow that guy. Like we have seen a lot of running backs kind of rotate through the backfield that don't have really high end fantasy value. And so, under these circumstances where we don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Steele and Samaje Perine weren't involved, and so that kind of lowers the fantasy value of all of the different assets. I think that's what we're likely looking at there in Kansas City. So I totally understand going to pick up somebody on the waiver wire and then maybe stashing them. I don't even know if you're getting a playable asset there, which I suppose you could say for everybody else that you mentioned there.
Right.
But Bucky Irving, I think I'm going to continue to beat this drum because again, it was a weird game last week in terms of being a tough matchup, but Rashad White has never proven that he can efficiently, effectively run the ball. And that continues to be the case. The rushing numbers are atrocious. I would not be surprised to see Bucky Irving's role, which already exists. He's not just a handcuff, he's already on the field. If that doesn't become a little bit more evenly split and then maybe even swing in his favor. Let's talk about some wide receivers now. Who are you picking up this week at that position?
The top guy to me is Demarcus Robinson because, you already don't have Puka and now you don't have Cooper Kupp. And then Tyler Johnson's going to be on that list as well. So both of those guys will be rosterable and Robinson could be startable because, the Rams are going to throw the ball. There's a good chance that team's going to be behind a lot moving forward. Alec Pierce, who Lindsay's talked about is worth an ad off the wire. Quentin Johnston. Now, listen, I know it was one game, but still, if you're thin at wide receiver, he's a young guy in his second year. Maybe Harbaugh found something. We'll find out, but he's worth an ad. We've talked about Juwan Jennings in San Francisco. And then I know Jahan Dotson didn't do anything on Monday night, but he did run a lot of routes and play a bunch of snaps. And with AJ Brown out, I think he's probably the guy to add off of that Philadelphia roster, although I wouldn't be expecting a ton.
Yeah, that was I mean, he's hardly been there, and so maybe that's part of the problem, but he was hardly involved last night. So I don't know if Jahan Dotson, that's the guy that we said, prior to the game that you should probably go get to cover your bases with AJ Brown. I was not enthused about what I saw there. What about Jordan
Mhm.
Whittington with the Rams too? Because now you're missing Puka and you're missing Cooper Cup. He saw a lot of snaps in the slot once Cooper got hurt. And so I feel like now you've got all three of those names and it becomes a little bit of a dart throw. And maybe all three are worth picking up, just because assuming you're not going to be able to get all three. So maybe, if two of them aren't available, maybe the third one is also still worth putting on your bench just to
Yeah, he'd be the
see
third.
where the ball
Yeah, he'd be the
goes.
third guy. Yeah, out of that trio. Yep.
Okay. What about tight ends?
Hunter Henry is going to be the most added tight end this week. Yeah, he's playing a ton of snaps. He's got a high target share. Now, he didn't do anything in week 1, and then he had a huge game in week 2. He's got the Jets on Thursday night. So, but people are hurting. Tight end's an S show right now. So he's worth an add. I got Mike Gesicki on this list, but like if T. Higgins comes back, which we don't know, like Gesicki's value is going to go down. And to be quite honest with you, the matchup against the Commanders, they're not that bad against tight ends. So I don't love Gesicki, but again, we're desperate. Colby Parkinson, again, we're desperate. Zach Ertz, he's playing as the number 1 tight end for the Commanders, and their pass catches leave much to be desired, especially if Terry McLaurin is not getting the job done. So he's also worth an add. But again, like none of these players are blowing my mind. Like they are all, I am hurting at tight end, and I got to plug in somebody. Here you go.